going to be sharing the tea on community engagement for nonprofits. But if you never met me before, again, I'm Sabrina Walker Hernandez. I am with Supporting World Hope, a nonprofit consulting company that I started after 25 years in the industry. And today we have with us Rashima Davis, and she is the founder and principal consultant at Emboldened Action LLC.
Yeah.
Yay, Rashima, thank you for being here. And we're going to be talking about community engagement for nonprofits. It's one of those questions that come up quite often in our group. And so I decided, you know what, who's the expert in this area? And we have the expert in this area. And she's going to share some of her nuggets and knowledge with us today. So before we get started, if you can click the heart or the like button, if you can hear me loud and clear, and let me know where you are watching from, even if it's in replay, the heart, the like, hit hashtag replay. This is going to help us with our algorithm so that this kind of stays in the top of the feed, because, Facebook is always changing the algorithms. So keep that in mind. And you can post your questions if you have any questions in the comments, because any type of engagement is really going to help us. And Rashima is going to answer those questions for you as well if you have questions. So Rashima, tell me a little bit about yourself and your experience.
All right. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for having me and the warm welcome, and literally warm welcome, right? We're back in with power and water. So yay for that. So again, Rashima Davis, and I am the principal consultant with Emboldened Action. Very excited to be here. I started Emboldened Action, gosh, it seems like just yesterday, but it's probably about 7 months or so in the middle of a pandemic. Started my consulting, and it was after a very successful, I like to say a very successful nonprofit career with the YMCA. I was there for over 20 plus years. So in various roles, I'm executive director, VP of operations and community development, and worked at several Ys across the country, and also our national office at the YMCA of the USA as well. And COVID happened, and thought, okay, I've got to do something, and Emboldened Action was born. I would just say that as far as my experience is concerned, I love community engagement. It really is my passion, and just connecting with people and being out there in the community, outside of the four walls of the building, even virtually, however we do it, connecting with people. And I would say probably about 15 of those years, just really specifically on community engagement and relationship building.
Perfect, perfect. So I do have a couple of questions for you. And I did warn you that as you speak, some other questions might come up. So I already have one percolating in my head, but I'm going to start off with the questions that I know that the people want. So what is community engagement in general? What is it?
Okay. So for your audience, in terms of nonprofit, community engagement really is a process, right? So you'll hear the term community engagement, and even at the top of our discussion, you were talking about the algorithms and click the like button and the hearts and all that. That is, for some industries, community engagement, right? But I'm talking about relationship building. I'm talking about connecting with individuals at that personal level where they are supporting your organization. They know your case, they know your what you do, and they're able to really support you. And so that community engagement is connecting not just with other service organizations, but you're connecting with the people in your community, right? And you're connecting with community leaders. Not just, again, we love what our our different community leaders are doing, but I'm talking about connecting. When was the last time your organization connected with maybe a homeowners association that serves a population that houses a population that you serve, right? So how are you getting out there? And community engagement is that process. How are you connecting? How are you building those relationships? So that's how I view community engagement.
Okay. And so why focus on community engagement? What will it accomplish?
Well, it really is the backbone of your organization, right? Like the fact is many nonprofits, the people that you serve, are members of your community. And how do you get out there and you connect with them? And they're the individuals that are utilizing your services, they're utilizing your buying your goods, just the people that you're serving. And you will not grow, your organization will not grow if you are not connecting with the community and community leaders and other service organizations. You have to get out of the four walls. And you also have to get out of just your immediate service area. We were talking just offline when you were saying, I want to expand, I want to do other things, right? Myself included. But that means you got to get connected to people, and people have to know what you're doing, and they have to really believe in the services that you provide. And so community engagement is how you do that.
Okay. Okay. And then what impact does community engagement have on fundraising?
So yes. Okay. This is the $1 million question, right?
Yes, it is.
And literally, right? So in terms of community engagement, when you are connecting with individuals in your community, then you are making sure that you're giving people an opportunity to support you, right? And to do good. And I have a really great example about how community engagement works. When I was working for a nonprofit, and I made sure for my particular service area was doing some what I call asset mapping, trying to figure out who are my assets out there in the community, who needs to know more about my organization, right? And discovered that we had a faith-based community which was not tapped into. And literally in this particular service area, there were 80 churches, 80 churches. And so how can I connect with 80 people? Well, it starts with figuring out who are the influencers there. And long story short, connected with an influential faith leader who gathered other faith leaders together. And they actually became a small committee that worked on a capital campaign. And they were instrumental in getting their congregation, their other colleagues, their network, right? And it all began with my relationship with that faith leader and saying, here's where we need you. And here's an opportunity to get connected. And so going outside of my four walls, making sure that the community knew about what we were doing and who we were serving, resulted in that small task force fundraising on our behalf. I wasn't doing it. They were literally fundraising for us and had their own goals and their own meetings, which was really great. And so I use that example to uplift about how relationship building is so key, how connecting in the community is definitely important, and how you might have gems right there in your community if you know how to look for them and engage them in a way that really deepens and connects them to what you're doing, right? And to your mission and to your values as well.
Wow, that's a really good example. And I know I see some questions, but I'm gonna wait to the end. So what role do board members play in community engagement?
I mean, that is it, right? The fact is that board members, when you're recruiting board members, and I know using myself as an example, when I was recruiting board members, I was looking for time, talent, and treasure, as they say, right? And you're looking for affluence, but also influence. And oftentimes we get stuck in, how can this board member help me fundraise, or what can they give, and get, and all of those different parameters. But in terms of community engagement and how board members can really help is you are a connector, right? You're on my board because you are an influencer. And you can open doors for us. And it's not just with other organizations, but who do you know? Who are your neighbors? What other service organizations do you support? And how are they being engaged in the community? And how can I partner with them as well? So board members are so critical. I definitely could not have done any of my fundraising experience without my board. Individuals that could really speak to the case, really talk to storytelling, really can gather those cheerleaders to get behind the mission as well. And then board members are key for community engagement. And I will share with you that board members are really great because you can have board members attend a lot of those community events. I know that was something that I actually required from my board members. You have to be out there in the community. It's not just staff, it's not just me, right? But you, because you're representative of the community, and how can you connect and help with that relationship building. And then ultimately it boils down to, when that happens, then those are when the dollars, come in. But it takes time, and people have to understand that connection.
Yeah, that's really good, because I think that a lot of times people just focus in on the fundraising and not the influence in the community. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to say, if you're just joining us, welcome to our broadcast. We're right in the middle. We're currently talking about community engagement, and we've just covered some really gems, some really nuggets about what is community engagement, how it will help you in accomplishing some of your goals, whether they be fundraising or building relationships, and also how your board can engage in the community process, and the importance of not only identifying board members that have affluence, which is money in our world, but also influence, right, in the community. So again, let us know where you're watching from. Make a comment, click a heart or like, and even if you're in replay, this is gonna help us with our algorithms. I do see some questions. We are going to hold those to the end, and they will get answered. So stick around with us, okay? So another question that I have for you here is, how can nonprofits increase digital engagement using technology, like virtual meetings or websites or social media?
We've been in this virtual world for what, a year now?
Yes, it'll be a year in 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. Yes. So in terms of connecting, and this is a really, I don't want to say difficult topic, because you're talking about, depends on where your nonprofit is and how you're engaging with the community. And some communities, you're still dealing with digital divide. We know that that has come up with just the fact of virtual schooling, et cetera, and people using their cell phones and trying to have their children, access the web that way, right? And so I don't want to be remiss in not mentioning that many nonprofits serve communities that are still struggling around the digital divide. So I just want to put that out there first. In terms of how you can engage, that the first way I would say is that you want to make sure you can be on platforms such as this, Facebook Live and Zoom, right? But how are you engaging with what the community is doing, right? So when was the last time you attended a community meeting just to hear what's happening around you, right? And so sometimes we approach community engagement as if we're coming to the community to always to definitely serve, right? But also with our hand out. right? How can you help us? How can you give? How can you? And with community engagement, it really has to be a two-way communication and a two-way street, right? And that for me, I spent a lot of times at so many different, at the time, right, pre-COVID, so many neighborhood association meetings. Did not live there at all, but my organization served that community, and I wanted to hear about what's happening. And then saying, okay, I'm hearing that they actually need, here's a program. So let me go and talk, let me communicate with individuals. And so the digital piece is that homeowners associations are still hosting their meetings. There's still a lot of things that are happening on Zoom, WebEx, MS Teams, whatever that platform may be, right? So I encourage all organizations to get connected, find out what's happening in your community. So, and then you participate as an active participant, not to hear about how you can, you know, talk about what you can do, but just simply to hear about what's happening in your community, then taking that back to your staff and having a brainstorming session and saying, you know, how can we help? As well. So utilizing those platforms. The second thing I would say for digital is to collaborate. You know, to some nonprofits may not necessarily have all the technology, you know, but you can co-sponsor, you can collaborate on the digital platforms as well. There are so many ways that you can still connect with the community. As well. And then there's just making sure that as much as you can, have those relationships, you know, you can still connect, you can still smile, you can still, you know, people can still feel your warmth through the screen, but they can also feel like can pick up when you don't want to be there, right? And so it's really important for the digital pieces to still use those same strategies. You're still connecting, you're still building relationships, and also not being afraid to quote unquote take it old school, where you're picking up the phone and calling someone and talking to them. I heard something that you said, and I really want to talk to you more about that as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It does. And it actually resonated with me because I'm a Rotarian, and you said, you know, these meetings haven't stopped. You know, we're still meeting virtually, and we're still looking for guest speakers. And, you know, same thing with any other association or civic group or anything like that. So people just really need to keep that in mind. You know, the world didn't stop, it just went virtual.
Very true. Very true.
People are still meeting, and they're still gathering together in groups. It's just in a different space. So that can't be used as an excuse not to engage the community.
Absolutely.
So that was a really good point that you made there. So what are the best ways nonprofits can increase community engagement even in this pandemic? You know, you kind of touched on that, but are there some other ideas around that?
To increase community engagement, the first thing that I do whenever I am new to a community or new to a specific service area or want to venture out, if you will, is I use the tool of asset mapping, right? Like I want to know who are the assets in my community, and not to minimize assets as like things, but just to say, you know, who are the leaders, who are the influential people that I need to know about? And that's a way to increase your community engagement, because if you don't know about the local PTA, if you're not connecting, if you're not truly connected to faith-based community as well, if you're not connected to other service organizations, sometimes, you know, we get very territorial around that, and you want it to be, you want to be part of that relationship building, right? And so it is okay to build relationships with other organizations. You can collaborate, and there is enough issues out there, right? And just an abundance of issues where you can collaborate with other organizations. So that's another way that you can increase community engagement. Also, it is important, I think, in terms of increasing community engagement, is to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. Oftentimes we think, well, we have an outreach coordinator, or I have a, someone who goes out and just talks to people, right? And then you're thinking that that's going to immediately turn into dollars, or that's going to immediately turn into, 100 people showing up. That may not simply be the case. And so understanding it takes time, and it takes intentionality around those opportunities. So relationship building, asset mapping is a true tool that you can use in terms of increasing your community engagement.
Okay. And then how can nonprofits measure community engagement?
Absolutely. So as with anything that you measure, you want to make sure that you're specific around what you're trying to measure, right? So you wouldn't just say, I'm going to measure community engagement. You would say, using my example around the pastors group that I talked about earlier that was helping with fundraising, right? The goal was, how many relationships or connections can we accomplish in the next 30 days or the first quarter, and then how many of those have resulted in a gift? Just looking at specific measurables and not necessarily a broad term of community engagement. So you want to make sure you're measuring the right thing though too, right? Like the fact of that, in that example, that task force was charged with raising a certain dollar amount and connecting us to the rest of the 80 churches in the community, right? And so you want to make sure that you're clear about those goals, that they are measurable, and that you are measuring the right thing.
Okay. Okay. And so what is a consultant's role in community engagement?
Any and everything, but let me be more specific about that. So for me and Bold in Action, I can serve in a couple of ways. And there's consultants out there that will help around community engagement, can help you with your asset mapping, being a thought partner in terms of how can community engagement help your particular organization. So coming up with a specific plan for the organization, that is another way. Also, of course, this was pre-COVID, but I'll say as an example was to be on the ground with you, and walking with you alongside as you're building some of those relationships, being very strategic around that as well. I would say post-COVID, or current COVID really, right? And that it is about really that asset mapping is so important, relationship building, acting as a thought partner in terms of community engagement, and finding ways to help you strategize about how to be effective around community engagement. So, and how does it work for your organization versus another organization? It's not going to necessarily be cookie cutter because you serve different communities which have different needs. And it's also important to understand where you are. You might have a really great relationship with your community. And so you want to make sure that you're tapping into that as well. And maybe there's some strategies that you had not thought of that a consultant can help you think about.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. And I know we do because I start to see them pop up. So I know we have at least 3 here, so let me get to them. So one of them is, they just put, what is assets mapping? I know you referenced it a couple of times. So can you give us a little bit more on asset mapping?
Asset mapping, the way that I use it is asset mapping is simply charting out who are the individuals that can assist in your community engagement and relationship building. Right. So that is a way that you can do asset mapping. Asset mapping also includes people and organizations as well. So you can list a few organizations in your service area as well that you really want to make sure that you have a partnership with. And so you just want to make sure that you're listing that, and they're considered an asset to your community engagement plan as well.
Okay, and is this a tool that you provide as a part of your service, or is this a tool that's like kind of readily available?
It is, asset mapping is a tool that's out there. It is a tool that I provide through my consulting as well. So when I meet with you and determine if asset mapping is something that maybe perhaps would be useful for you, then we do go through that process as well.
Perfect, perfect. So here's another question, which I was actually thinking this when you were speaking. Okay, so they put marketing and community engagement. Is it the same? My question was, what do they intercept? But is it the same?
Not for me. And
okay.
Here's why. Because I see community engagement truly about the relationship building. It is not, in my head and in my consulting world, it's not about the marketing pieces, right? But it truly is about, Sabrina, can you talk to me about what your organization is doing? I'd love to hear about that and how we could possibly collaborate. Not necessarily about giving you a tool or a brochure or anything, but I want to build a relationship with you to really understand how we can serve our community better as well. And then through those series of connections, hopefully you're going to connect me to other people, right? But it really is about that service and that relationship building component. And I see marketing as very tactical, if you will. There is an intersection because eventually, yes, you will be, if I'm effective in my community engagement with you, Sabrina, then you are going to naturally be talking about, have you heard about this organization? They're really doing some really amazing things. And here's what I know about that. And so you're naturally going to be marketing for me. And that is a byproduct of it, but it starts with the relationship building first.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So another question, and I think that's going to be the final question. I just want to make sure really quick, I'll give you a little time. What's the role of the CEO in community engagement? And I think that one might have come because you said outreach coordinator. Mm-hmm. And so you're dealing with a lot of small nonprofits and they're thinking, well, do I need an outreach coordinator? Or so.
No, you don't have to necessarily do that. But yes, most CEOs, right? You're naturally a community engager, right? So you should be out there. I think, my opinion is that you are building those relationships and that you are connecting with individuals. For smaller nonprofits, absolutely, executive directors or CEOs, you are doing community engagement every day because you are connecting with those that you serve, those who can put you in connection to people to serve in the future, building relationships, et cetera. So naturally, that would be a role of an executive director or CEO on just day-to-day as well. But I want to make sure that if there's anything that you get from today's conversation, is that it is about that relationship building component. But it's not just CEO to CEO, right? And so that's where sometimes some of your other staff, community engagement should be the entire organization. All staff should be involved in some type of community engagement and awareness as well, because it's not about quote unquote the titles of the individual. It really is about that connection piece as well. And so you can definitely go to other service organizations, as Sabrina had shared earlier, and you're connecting with individuals, but you're also wanted to get connected to, as I mentioned, the homeowners associations or PTA, or there are just a variety of other organizations and individuals that you can connect with as a leader. And so I just use the term as a leader, wherever you are in your organization, how are you connecting with individuals so that your organization can serve in a way that the community is thriving?
Got it. So those are the questions that I see here, which is good because I usually stop at 3 anyway, so that worked out. So you know what? I just want to thank you for being here. And if you could let people know how they can get in contact with you, if they have any questions, And I also like to see if you have any final words.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this morning. And to reach me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Rashima Davis, or Embolden Action is also on LinkedIn. Our website, emboldenaction.com. Pretty easy there. We're also on Twitter at Embolden Action too. So I just encourage you to reach out. Happy to have a follow-up discussion as well. And just my final words on around community engagement. It's one of my favorite fields and topics as well. And I just encourage you to connect. We are virtually, but you can connect with individuals virtually, and in the hopes of being present and in person someday soon as well. But the community needs your interaction and is seeking that, and just approach community engagement with a humbleness and a willingness to, just connect on an individual level as well. So reach out if I can be of any assistance. And thank you, Sabrina, so much. I appreciate it sipping tea with you today.
I know. Thank you. Thank you. And I will make sure that I drop the contact for LinkedIn for you in the comments. So if anybody wants to reach out and have a further conversation, they're able to quickly find you. And I'm sure that you will be more than happy to help them. So again, this is Sipping Tea with Sabrina, and we are so happy that you were able to join us. If you want to hear about any other topics, look, guys, I'm kind of scheduled to June, but then after that, I want to know more about what you want to hear about. So then I can go out and identify those speakers. So if you have any topic around nonprofit that you want to hear about, drop it in the comments so we can identify the experts in those areas and bring them on, and you get to pick their brains. It's just wonderful. Rashima came on and answered all these questions and asked her questions, and it's a wonderful opportunity. So again, let us know in the comments if you want to hear on a specific topic that will help us set the schedule for the remaining half of the year. And that was done very intentional so that you can have input on what you want to hear about. So with that, I'm going to remind you, my website is www.supportingworldhope.com. You can look up there for any resources that we have. And we will leave you with this. I will leave you with this. Your mission matters and deserves to be highlighted in your community. Your mission matters and can be an inspiration to those who need it the most. And your mission matters and deserves to be funded to its fullest capacity. And that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. See you next time.